Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. It's Stephen here. Today we're going to give you our top 5 favourite comic book movies of all time. Before we get into it, if you enjoy this type of content, please ensure you give the video a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe. Okay, so as discussed, we are going to give you our top 5 favourite comic book movies of all time. I'm going to give you my list, Dan's going to give you his, and I'm sure we're going to have some differences throughout. We were going to do a top 10, but we thought to ourselves, let's make it a 5. That way there's going to be a lot of movies that we leave off the list, and it maybe creates a bit more of a discussion. It's such a hard list to put together. There's so many comic book movies that come out every single year. In my opinion, the majority of them are a decent standard. Some of them are excellent.
Yeah, so these movies are our opinions, and we'll try to explain why these movies made our list. Me and Stephen have different views on what makes a good comic book movies, but we'll try to explain why these movies deserve to be on our list.
Without further ado, I'm going to give you a couple of honourable mentions that just didn't quite make my list, but nevertheless are movies that I love. And then I'm going to get in and give you my top 5. Okay, so first honourable mention is Thor Ragnarok. It was brought to us in 2017 by Taika Waititi. To me, it's one of the best. It's hard to call it a standalone because it's part of that MCU, but it's certainly the best Thor movie they've ever made, and it's definitely the best movie they've made that's focused on sort of one character. It's hilarious from start to finish. It's just a blast. It's a movie that I could rewatch probably every day and not get bored of. Shout out to Korg. But yeah, it's just unfortunate I couldn't quite fit it into my top 5 list because there's so many other movies that are probably, in my opinion, just slightly better. My next honourable mention might be a wee bit controversial because I know some people aren't really a big fan of it. I actually wasn't when I seen it in the cinema originally. But after a couple of rewatches, I've definitely learned to love it. That's 2013's Man of Steel. It's brought to us by Zack Snyder. To me, it's probably the best adaptation of Superman that we've had. I know a lot of people love the Christopher Reeve stuff, and to me that's amazing. But it's just a wee bit dated. Man of Steel is an excellent movie, really well put together. It just didn't quite make my list, and I also know it is a wee bit divisive, and some people don't like it at all. But to me, I think it's an excellent film. My final honourable mention is Watchmen, another Zack Snyder movie. Snyder's been a wee bit unlucky not to make any of my top 5. He's made some excellent comic book movies. He's made some not so great comic book movies as well, it needs to be said. But I thought Watchmen, 2009 it came out, is one of the best sort of comic book to movie adaptation, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's the best comic book to movie adaptation. Jeez, I'll have to edit that out. So yeah, it's an excellent film. If you haven't watched it already, give it a shot because I do think it is a wee bit underrated. So give that a go and see what you think.
Alright, so for my honourable mention, I'm going to have 2 X-Men movies. X-Men 2, released in 2003, directed by Bryan Singer, is all set before the MCU, so there's no cinematic universe to worry about. It was probably more simpler and more straightforward, and I really enjoyed it. X-Men First Class is the next honourable mention. Released in 2011, this movie's great. Directed by Matthew Vaughn. It's an origin story, so it takes us back to when the X-Men first started. It has great actors with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. It didn't quite make my list, but it was really close.
Okay, so let's get into my top 5. It's really hard because I was trying not to make this so maybe MCU heavy, but it just happens to be that there's no point in me pretending, oh here, I love this movie over this, just to try and make a different list. Fact is, I love the MCU, so the majority of the movies, unfortunately, that make my top 5 are MCU movies. So number 5 is Avengers Endgame. Came out 2019. It was brought to us by the Russo brothers. Came out pretty much this time last year, if I'm correct. It's an excellent film. It's a highest grossing movie of all time. Finally something beat Avatar. What more can you really say on it? It's the accumulation of the whole MCU. The Russo brothers have done an excellent job on the film. I don't think they've made a bad comic movie at all. They really put their own stamp on each character, and it was a joy to watch from start to finish. I know some people might have that further down their list, but to me, it just squeezes in there at number 5.
Alright, so for my number 5, I'm going for Tim Burton's 1982 Batman Returns. This is not your typical comic book movie. A lot of the comic book fans don't like this movie, and I understand why. You're either going to love it or hate it. You're taking the character of Batman and place him in a Tim Burton universe. Tim Burton's German expressionist style seems to fit well with the dark, gritty Batman, and his style is unique within Hollywood because we don't see enough of it. But if you haven't seen this movie, give it a watch. It's worth your time.
Okay, so my next movie is number 4, which is Winter Soldier, again brought to us by the Russo brothers in 2014. I mentioned how I think the Thor Ragnarok movie is one of the best sort of adaptations for that character, the best sort of standalone, if you can call it, Marvel movie. I think Captain America Winter Soldier is the best one. This is the best movie that they've done that just focuses mainly around one character. Captain America is my favourite MCU character, so I'm going to be a wee bit biased when it comes to that. I think he's had the best trilogy, and I think the second film in his trilogy is his best one. I do love Civil War as well, but I just thought Winter Soldier just pips it there. It's not your typical comic book movie. It's a political spy thriller. If you're not even a massive fan of comic book movies, I do think you would get something out of this movie. But yeah, for me, that comes in at number 4. It's an excellent film.
Okay, so for my number 4, I'm going to go for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, released in 2004. Nostalgia does play its role in my choice. It's one of the first superhero / comic book movies that I saw in the cinema, so it does play its part. But that aside, the movie's fantastic. It's easy to watch. It's really enjoyable. Tobey Maguire is fantastic in the role as Spider-Man and as Peter Parker. Give it a go and you really enjoy it.
Number 3 is another MCU movie and another movie brought to us by the Russo brothers. I did try not to make this so MCU heavy, but it's so difficult to do. This is 2018's Infinity War. To me, Infinity War and Endgame, both amazing movies. To me, Infinity War just edges over Endgame. I think it has a better end. Well, Endgame has a great ending too. I love the ending, I'll say that. The Infinity War ending I love with a snap. I think the movie is superb. It really is an Avengers movie, and it brought so many characters together. That and Endgame were both excellent films, but for me, Infinity War it just pips it. So that comes in at number 3.
My number 3 has already been mentioned, Captain America Winter Soldier, and I agree with what Stephen said. The movie's fantastic. It's a spy thriller with a lot of twists, a lot of turns. It was the movie that got me into the MCU. It hooked me in. At that point, I wasn't really fussed with Iron Man and Thor, but Winter Soldier really got me invested into the MCU.
Number 2. This might be slightly controversial. I don't think anyone will be surprised that this is on my list. I just think for many people this will be the number 1. It's an excellent film, came out in 2008, brought to us by Christopher Nolan, and that is The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight to me is a masterpiece. I love this film. And just because it isn't my number 1 favourite comic book movie of all time doesn't mean that I don't absolutely think this movie is amazing. Heath Ledger, in my opinion, is the best Joker there ever has been, hands down. I know some people love Joaquin Phoenix Joker. He was excellent as Joker. To me, it's Heath Ledger all the way. I think this movie is incredibly well written. It's incredibly well acted and directed, and it rightfully deserves to be up there. Not only, in my opinion, one of the best comic book movies ever made, but it's one of the best movies ever made. So number 2 is The Dark Knight.
My number 2 is probably going to annoy Stephen. It's Todd Phillips' Joker. This movie is almost perfect for me in my eyes. I love this movie. It was one of the few movies that made me rush back to the cinema to watch. I had to watch it again. I had to see that performance again. Joaquin Phoenix is just unbelievable. He's breathtaking in this movie. How this movie sounds, looks, feels, the emotion in it is just ridiculous. And it's something I feel the MCU has never done in terms of emotion in one movie, because it is a standalone movie. You don't need to watch 20 movies just to get the plot, or 20 movies just to get a certain joke between two characters. This movie is amazing, and I highly recommend watching it.
My favourite comic book movie of all time is The Avengers. It came out in 2012, brought us by Joss Whedon. I know Dan probably would have an issue with this because I don't think he's the biggest fan of this movie. I can see an argument that maybe other MCU movies are better. You've got Civil War, you've got Endgame, you've got Infinity War. But to me, there's nothing that's going to ever beat that feeling whenever I watched Avengers in the cinema for the first time. These were all the characters that I grew up with, characters that I loved, and seeing them on screen together and working really well in an excellent movie. In my opinion, nothing tops that experience. I rewatched the movie recently and it still holds up for me. So yes, Avengers Assemble, I think it came out as in the UK. It was called Avengers Assemble. Brought this by Joss Whedon, is my favourite comic book movie of all time.
I can't believe he picked the Avengers as his number one. Like, what? Jeez. Alright, I'll try to save this video. So for my number one, I'm going for the obvious one. Christopher Nolan, The Dark Knight. It's probably most people's choices, and it is an obvious one. I tried to not choose this one, but it is the best movie that I've seen in terms of a comic book movie. It has everything, and we've talked about it before. What more can be said? Great action, great actors, great characters, great storyline. You know, Christopher Nolan really knocked it out of the park when he made this movie. And it's probably the reason why we haven't seen a decent Batman movie since. Not to discredit Dark Knight Rises or like the Ben Affleck's Batman. I just think The Dark Knight it basically is a perfect movie. So when you compare any movie against it, it's going to look lesser. But you know, it was a great movie. If you haven't watched it yet, where have you been for the last 12 years? That was our top 5. If you agree or disagree with me and Steven's choices, then honestly let us know in the comments below. The interesting thing about this topic is that there's no real right or wrong answers. Everyone's top 5 is going to be unique to that person, and that's why it's so interesting. But anyway, give us a comment below and don't forget to subscribe.
Alright folks, peace out.
Thank you.